Good Tuesday morning. This continues to be St. Matthew's 5th chapter. These are very powerful moral commands, as it were, and they become really the essence of Christian life, as opposed to minimal conditions of Christian life, Judeo-Christian life, and the commandments. These are ideals to be pursued, and we're asked to pursue them, and we'll be judged by having pursued them. I'll show you what it says here. Jesus said to his disciples, "You've heard that it was said, 'You shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy.'" That, by the way, is the most basic form of ancient morality. Ancient morality was based upon the concentric outward circles. You start with the immediacy of your family, then your relatives, then your neighbors, and you work your way out of dependence, people who require each other, okay? Inside that, called inside or outside the pale. Inside that pale, you have obligations to each other to protect each other. It's against the external forces. Outside the pale, you have no rights. Remember the story of the Good Samaritan? He takes care of an enemy, not a stranger, an enemy. He should have whacked him. In that world, he would have left him to die. And he would have been required to do so. He's the enemy. What are you making him better for? What, are you kidding me? Okay? Christianity radicalizes that kind of morality, the neighborhood morality. It's a family morality. It's a blood morality. Who belongs to whom? And Christianity points the arrow the opposite way. Everyone is neighbor, even including the stranger. There is no inside the circle or outside the circle. There is only those. There is only neighbors. There are only neighbors, and neighbors are everyone, you see. And therefore, we are active in being a neighbor to a neighbor. We have to be active. It's not who you are, it's who I am. And who I am is neighbor to you. It's a verb. Being a neighbor is a verb. It's an action in which I look out to you. Look out to you and for you. See? It's not what are you going to do for me, I'm your neighbor. It's what I'm going to do for you. And I am neighbor to even the stranger. I'm kind, and I have to be generous to and protect all who are in the purview of my life experience. From the most remote person on the street, the man walking down the street here, I have to care for him. To a degree, but to an active degree, as I do to my immediate family, my friends, my fellow Passionists. Do you see? It's not concentric circles. It's who is it before me to whom my heart should go out. It's not anything about that person. It's what I am compelled by Christ to do. I'm compelled to love even the stranger, and here, even the enemy. See what he says? "But I say to you, love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you, that you may be children of your heavenly Father. He makes his sun rise on the good and the bad, and causes rain to fall on the just and the unjust. Well, if you love those who love you, what recompense will you have? Don't tax collectors do that? Remember, those were the bad guys. And if you greet your brothers only, what's unusual about that? Don't the pagans do that? Be perfect, just as your heavenly Father is perfect." See, that's neat. Our command is for infinite love. No, he's not taken away from loving in a normal manner the people you would normally love, but you have to love everyone as Christ loves us. He loves his enemies as well as his friends. He loves the men who killed him. And he compels us and commands us to do the same. See? That's why, in many ways, the martyrs are such powerful figures, because they pray for and they love the ones who are persecuting them, the ones who are killing them. That's the truth. I remember, I'll give you a true story. I already told you this story, but I'll tell you, and I'll tell it to you again. Some of our Passionists, now these guys are all dead now, but this was 50 years ago, and I was a student in student life, and I lived with Passionists who had been missionaries to China in the 30s and the 40s. And they had been imprisoned by the Japanese, but the worst part was the Chinese communists. And it was doubly horrible, because not only did the Chinese communists imprison them and brutally imprison them, they killed many of the Chinese Catholics that were their friends and parishioners. And I was living with the men, Baz Bauer, Paul Ubinger, and a number of others, Bishop O'Gara, who ordained me. Can you imagine that Because of you, your friends are killed. It's worse than the punishment you take, the imprisonment. These guys look like scarecrows coming out of prison, coming out of China in the mid-50s, 70 years ago. But I remember the affection that they had and their desire to go back. Even though they were prevented by both Chinese and by the American law. We wouldn't let anybody go back there, okay? They weren't invited and they weren't going back. They would have gone back. I told you the story. I asked a little Paul Ubinger, a little pipsqueak. I said, Father Paul, would you ever go back? He said, I'd walk back, or crawl back, or walk back if I could. And I heard them when they would talk about their friends there, many of whom died from the communists were killed. They talked with such beautiful love, and they were so willing to die for the cause, to die for their friends, not the cause, their friends. That's love. That's love. Okay? I think they even loved, and in many ways, their persecutors. I never heard them really trash mouth the Chinese communists. I got to think back about it. They didn't love them in that sense. They didn't like them. But I don't remember them really trashing them. To me, the men that I knew, the passionists I knew that came out of China, who had been imprisoned and all the rest, they were martyrs. It was a privilege in my life to live with them because I saw in them such charity and self-sacrifice. They were beautiful men, and they loved deeply the people they served, knowing by serving them they most likely got them killed. Yeah, that's the truth. That's the truth. Yeah. See, when he said, love your enemies, pray for those who persecute you, I can see, my passionate brothers, that you may be children of your heavenly Father. For he makes the sun rise and fall on the good and the bad, and causes rain to fall on the just and the unjust. Be like the Father. See, God the Father, who loves us all. And we have to do the same. We should do the same. I hope I made sense this morning. I just seem to be reflecting that the passionists I lived with were the holiest men that I've known, not because they were pious. They were anything but. In many ways, they were tougher than nails. But they were holy because they sacrificed. First, in the beginning, by traveling on an old freighter to China, knowing they would never come home again. They went into the interior, 1,500 miles. They had to learn a new language. They had to learn Chinese. They had to become adapted to the food and the culture and all the lack of medical help and all the rest. And then the communists, first the Japanese and then the communists. And they didn't break. In fact, they yearned to go back. I think they'd have gone back. Well, they were willing to go back under communism. They wanted to be with their people. I saw them looking at photographs and the warmth that they shared with each other, looking at some of their parishioners, the photographs of their parishioners. What a tender moment. Sad and tender and beautiful. These were great, great men. I mean it. It was a gift of God for me to live in their presence. Just to have said, I lived with these men. I lived with the martyrs.